then to the memorial. So this first hour will be a memorial to Galen, and then we will go on with our presentations after that. And what we thought we'd do this morning, there's several people who would like to make a few comments, maybe about 10 minutes or so, so I'll start off. I've known Galen the longest, and so I'll be the first to say a few words. And then Paul Rubel and Jocelyn will follow, and then Michael Ringborn and Martin Rauber, and then finally Pablo Picasso, and then Ula's going to finish up.
Thank you for naming Picasso.
I'm sorry, look at that. Pardon. You're hidden artistic talents,
It's
right?
never too late to start.
Okay, let's go ahead and start in then. 3 months ago, we lost a gifted and loyal friend and a prolific clinical scientist and the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Electrocardiology. For the past 20 years, he's been the prime mover and the driving force for the staff symposium. This meeting will be only the second, as far as I know, that Galen has not been with us. And the other one was right after 9/11, when no one from the U.S. came to Europe. But his wonderful and very capable wife, Marilyn, has graciously joined us, and we look forward to her continued presence here and being able to share remembrances of Galen and stories. So Marilyn is the person who best organized Galen and kept him grounded. Now, I've known Galen since 1972, when he was the director of the coronary care unit at Duke, and I was a cardiology fellow. He was one of my mentors, collaborating on a project that I was interested in at that time, which led to some publications. And then in the late 1980s, I saw Galen at American College of Cardiology, a Duke reunion, and I shared with him what I was doing with prolonged balloon inflation for angioplasty in the era before stents. And with Galen's foresight, we were able to connect with Michael Ringborn and Jonas Pedersen in Lund, Sweden, and do continuous ECG recordings, high frequency and standard recordings, both before, throughout, and after elective angioplasty. And as I mentioned, this was in the era prior to widespread use of stents. So this led to the Staff 1, 2, and 3 databases, with the addition of nuclear imaging in Staff 3, which clinically simulated the first 5 minutes of long inflations, up to 5 minutes, clinically simulated the first 5 minutes of a heart attack. Now, without Galen, the staff symposium would never have taken place, and his death leaves a huge hole for us to fill. But knowing Galen for over 40 years, I think I know him even longer than Marilyn, so probably longer than anyone else here in the room. But I'd like to share with you a few things that you already know and some things you don't know about Galen. Rarely, I think, has a researcher or scientist appeared in print as an author or co-author or editor as often as Galen. He was an author or co-author on over 500 peer-reviewed articles and over 700 articles, including non-peer-reviewed articles that he would write for a journal. He did about 15 book chapters or monographs, about 8 books as best I could count, and was then editor-in-chief of the Journal of Electrocardiology from 2004 until his death. The key, I think, you say, well, how can someone write 700 articles, be an author or co-author? And I think the key for Galen was that he was really more interested in mentoring than he was in a specific area of research. And so what he would usually do with someone that he was to be the mentor for was to say, what are you interested in? What would you like to do research with? Instead of saying, I've got this project and I want you to do this or that. Now, if they didn't have any idea at all, he might suggest some areas that they would be interested in working on. But one of his gifts was that he was able to take what a person was interested in, help them with structuring a research project, and then following through on it. Now, in this manner, he ended up co-authoring articles on virtually every topic in cardiology, from myocardial infarction to ischemia to vector cardiography, cardiac electrophysiology, cardiac anatomy, cardiac biomarkers, and a variety of miscellaneous cardiac topics. Well, almost every topic in cardiology, I think he has an article that he co-authored. He also mentored a host of people in cardiac research. He had 36 PhD mentorships in 10 universities in 6 countries. And he also mentored a host of cardiology fellows, residents in internal medicine, and medical students. Now, he was a director of the fellowship, cardiology fellowship program at Duke for 5 years. He was a coordinator of the internal medicine research group for 6 years, coordinator for medical student research for 13 years at Duke. And he even mentored the Duke football team seniors at one point. So mentoring was really something that was his forte. And finally, just a few comments on Galen's own development. Interestingly, he was adopted at birth and never knew his biologic parents. He was adopted by a couple in Collinsville, Pennsylvania, a small town in Pennsylvania, a middle-class family who could not have children of their own. And his parents were told by the doctor who delivered Galen that he had a birth defect and they might not want him, but they were anxious to adopt, and they said, no, that's fine. He had a hernia, and they fixed the hernia shortly thereafter. It wasn't a problem. But then one thing that may not be known is that Galen was a pianist, like Case and Vito entertained us our first night here at dinner. He was also played the piano and played the organ, and in high school he was the organist for the Brethren Church, where his family attended, and he apparently memorized 365 hymns, one for each day of the year. And then he would add a little jazz or a little bebop to those from time to time to liven things up at the church. He was valedictorian of his high school class and earned a full scholarship to Duke. However, he received a D- in French at Duke, and he almost flunked out, and he lost his scholarship in the process. So his father kindly said he would support him and pay for his education there at Duke, and Galen buckled down and graduated with a 2.9 GPA, and then stayed on at Duke for the rest of his career. And one of his most notable characteristics was that he was never put off by failure. In fact, he really embraced failure. And Marilyn says he sometimes would even have failure parties for someone who would, flop on something, and he'd say, no problem. He saw it as just a challenge, a way of improving, getting better, and going back at it again. He was very loyal to his friends and consistently supportive. Rob Califf, one of Galen's former mentees, who's now head of the FDA in the U.S., was asked what 2 or 3 words should be put on Galen's plaque in the cemetery at Duke Gardens, and he said 2 words, loyal friend. And when you worked with Galen, you realized that he was very intense, he was very focused, and he was an exacting taskmaster. He had a strict sense also of scientific ethics. But unlike many academicians, he really didn't care about academic advancement, and he really didn't care about making money. He worked at a free clinic in Durham, a half day a week for about 10 years, and I never heard him brag about his accomplishments, never once. In fact, to the contrary, he took much more pleasure in talking about other people's accomplishments. And for example, when we started these meetings, the staff symposium, he said, why don't we call it the staff symposium after the research that I'd done? I said, why don't we call it the Wagner Symposium? He said, no, absolutely not. And later when we came up with the Michael Ringborn Award, someone said, why don't we name it the Galen Wagner Award, since you've done all this mentoring with so many people? No, Michael Ringborn Award. So that was how he was. He wrote numerous poems, and they were always commemorating someone else. So someone's milestones, a PhD attainment, graduation, birthdays. I never saw any poems about himself or his own experience, unless you know of any.
Well, I'm finding them around the house. Poems, he stuck everywhere around the house, so he...
And many of these characteristics probably come from his upbringing in the Brethren Church. It's one of the 3 peace churches, the Quakers, the Mennonites, and the Brethren. And they stressed several things: living simply, and a lot of basic values like loyalty, honesty, hard work, and not material things like wealth and fame. Galen also had a number of unique characteristics. For example, he never used an alarm clock, and he never wore a watch. But somehow he had this internal clock that he was rarely late. Pretty remarkable. He often went to sleep during presentations. So, but when he woke up, he seemed to be in tune with what was going on. Remarkable. He was not a great athlete, but he loved sports. And with his usual intensity, he gave everything he played about 150% effort. And when I was a fellow at Duke, he organized volleyball games on Saturday morning for cardiac fellows and their spouses or significant others. And the Galen would go running after something and sometimes go sprawling spread eagle in the mud. But get up again and go right back at it with the same intensity that he had before. It was pretty remarkable. Now, about 8 years ago, Galen developed an unusual malignancy, Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. And in 2009, he requested a CBC when he wasn't feeling well. And when he saw the result, he said to Marilyn, "Bring my suitcase, I only have 2 weeks to live." That was 2009. His hemoglobin at that time was less than 6. But treatment was initially successful, and I never heard him complain, even when he was being transfused 2 units of blood every 2 weeks for 8 months, and not even when I talked to him on the phone about 2 days before he died. He depersonalized himself from his illness, and he kept up his writing, his networking, and his editorial duties to the end. Now, the staff symposia will never be the same without Galen, and we'll very much miss his insightful comments, his networking skills, his ability to connect people, and his infectious laugh and enthusiasm. But for those of us who knew him, he will continue to be with us in spirit, and particularly at these staff symposia. So I'll turn it over to Paul and Jocelyn now.
So, I first met Galen in the late 80s. It was during an ECG meeting. So he was sitting with Ron Sylvester behind me, and during a presentation about vectorcardiography applications, I made some comments. And then after, at the pause, I was sitting there, and he tapped me and said, "Okay, can we have a discussion on vectorcardiography?" And so it started, and it was a very, very vivid discussion. And so I still remember this discussion. And since that, I met several times Galen, and always he was so curious and interesting for discussion. So.
Yeah, after my PhD thesis, I have the opportunity, thanks to the Lund team, to meet and to discuss with Galen about my caviar method. And it was in '92 during Computers in Cardiology in Durham, and it was a great honor for me. Galen was always so curious and enthusiastic about new ECG processing methods. It was a wonderful story which lasted all over the years.
So Galen was really an excellent pedagogue and a mentor for all of us. He had a genius for triggering constructive discussions and to raise the relevant questions. We are all missing him so much.
So here's the picture of his first visit in Lyon I think in '93. And then we have selected some few additional pictures showing his impressive capacity of combining joie de vivre, joy of life, culture, and scientific knowledge. The same.
This was during the staff meeting in 2003. It was close to Thessaloniki. And you see Galen is here. We have several pictures, group pictures from staff meetings or other meetings. He never is in the forefront, as you said.
And here's a picture in Pise for the staff meeting in 2005.
He was uncharacteristically wearing a tie now, I see.
Yeah. Also in Pise,
Chateau Pise.
Chateau Pise, during the gala dinner of the Chateau Pise.
Here I offered a bottle of wine to Jocelyn from the area of Chateau
Yeah,
Pise.
the famous Morgan. And also for computers in cardiology, just before the staff meeting, we had a wonderful picture showing Marilyn and Galen with Paul Bocuse. A wonderful picture. Also during the gala dinner. I like this one.
No, this was during Malt 2008 in Scotland. And here you see he is looking, because Peter McFarlane and I don't remember the name of the cardiologist, they were learning to dance Scottish dances. And now, a few minutes after, you see Galen in action. So, this is his joie de vivre.
Yeah, in Vence at the Meg Foundation. Just last year.
Yeah.
And he always liked to discuss at any occasion with young people, young researchers, and to promote large discussion. It was in Vence. And also for playing pétanque.
And you see, it attracted many people because he was playing so well. These are some slides, but we will see later on a short film. In Vence again, staff was discussing, and then he left up and okay, said, staff, I will explain you. Explanations. Okay, so, okay. Okay, we'll show two short, the films are quite long, but we'll shorten up. Two films.
You can plug in the.
And the garden is this amazing mosaic where each part is just different colored tile. And it was, I don't know when, but maybe how long ago, but it's Mark Chagall, and it's, I don't know what it is. You have to stand back a ways to tell what it is.
I think so. You're right, Galen.
I think it's like,
So it's always so, that's a so impressive culture.
lying down.
I think Chagall always, it deals about love, isn't it? And the two figures in the middle.
Tu veux le faire?
And I thought he was, talking off the top of his head. I thought, no way. He did 50 publications for study looking at applications on these initial studies. And, what he did was to simulate the phrase 5 minutes on like that. You broke the balloon, except, what he found was that the symptoms, they have the same,
I have to tell a story about staff. Can you even imagine what it must feel like if your doctor, who you trust, tells you you're going to blow up a balloon in your coronary artery and keep it there for 5 minutes? Well, you trust your doctor, but then during that time you feel pain. It starts to hurt. And you say to your doctor, and your doctor just, and then staff, the patient would say, hey, it hurts. Just like it hurts at home. Yes, it's like it hurts at home. Now, do you still eat at McDonald's? Do you still smoke cigarettes? Well, you keep eating at McDonald's and you keep smoking cigarettes. This makes patients attention. It's when you are more than good. So one day I was there, and I hadn't been before, and so the patient was on the table and staff was blowing up the balloon, and the patient was complaining of pain. And so staff said, how much does it hurt? And so then staff says, well, where does it hurt? The patient says, well, down below. And staff said, down below, in your chest? No, down below. And so staff told the nurse, come on over and bring the urinal. I think perhaps, sure enough, the nurse did. Patient felt fine. Staff said, how much does it hurt? Well, not so bad now, doctor.
So you see, this was just a year before, and okay, we never would have believed that we would not be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate Hagen.
I also would like to say some words about our dear friend and mentor, Galen Wagner. In my own perspective, for now 21 years, that's a long time. I was a student back in the mid-90s, and I went to medical school, and I thought I would become, my aim was to become a good clinical doctor. And then all of a sudden I was invited to come to the US, thanks to Olaus also, of course, because he initiated the contact back in Lund. And I have so much to thank Galen for, because he invited me to a great world besides my clinical ambition in life. And I got the opportunity to spend some time with him and Staff Warren, of course. I was at Duke University 1 year in the mid-90s, and after that, a lot of things happened, and that's why I'm here today, so many years after that. I've experienced a lot of things. I've attended a lot of these meetings. Galen was a tremendous networker, and he created a lot of good communities. This is a